Hello again to our early birds, and thank you for joining us for today's Survivor Conference. Once again, my name is Thea, and I'll be your host for today together with my co survivor, Barbie. Hello, everyone. It's so great to see you all over here, and thank you for taking the time to join us for today's Survivor Conference entitled Models of Resilience and Collaborative Action for a Stronger Tomorrow. We have about 5 minutes before we start, and while we are waiting, we encourage everyone to say hello in the chat box and please feel free to interact with other participants. And please be guided with the request to change your Zoom name to the format provided in your chat box. Yes, once again, hello to our early birds. Thank you for being early, and we're so excited to have you here. And I see some of the survivor leaders already in the Zoom, and of course, here in person, I see some of the partners from White and Case, Community Tales, and of course, the IJM and the survivor leaders. So glad to see you, and we're so excited to hear your insights later. And thank you for being part of today's conference. Good day, everyone. Once again, my name is Thea, a survivor leader of the Philippine Survivor Network. With me is my co host and my fellow survivor leader, Barbie, and we want to welcome you to our survivor conference entitled Models of Resilience and Collaborative Action for a Stronger Tomorrow. Whether you're joining us in person or tuning in online, thank you so much for being with us. And we also want to acknowledge our participants from different parts of the Philippines and of course the world. And feel free to share your names and where you're joining from. Yes, hi everyone. My name is Barbie, also a member of the PSN Survivor Leader based in Cebu. This is a significant day for all of us, a time to celebrate our strength as survivor leaders, the fruits of collaboration with partners, and the power of shared advocacy. This gathering is organized by our very own Philippine Survivor Network or PSN with the support of International Justice System Philippines and of course White and Case. Yes, before we proceed, just a few reminders for our online participants. Please keep your microphones on mute. Utilize the Zoom chat box for questions, comments, and feedback. And please avoid taking screenshots of survivor speakers to protect their identity. Thank you so much, Barbie, for the reminders. And of course, to formally start our program, may we call on Attorney Lawrence Aritao of IJM Philippines, followed by our very own Mark Neal for their opening remarks. Please join us as we welcome them.
Well, thank you, Thea. Thank you, Barbie. A good day to everyone. Well, good day, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. But my warm greetings to everyone, especially to the survivor leaders, partners, and fellow advocates of child protection that are joining us this afternoon. It's going to be a very meaningful 2 hours, I guarantee. And the reason I know that, well, two reasons I'm aware of that. First is what? What the conference is about. It's about models of resilience and collaborative action. Second, it's also about who. Who is leading us? Who has organized us this afternoon? It's not us. It is members of the Philippine Survivor Network that have put this together, that have even chosen the title, the venue, the content. I wanted to say thank you also to everybody that is actively supporting and committed to the idea of survivor leadership. With that thought in mind, let me step aside and allow them to lead us. Thank you very much and welcome. Mark?
Thank you so much, Other Nido. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first ever Survivor Conference. Wait lang po. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Mark Neal. I'm active member of the Philippine Survivor Network and a survivor consultant of IJM Center to End Online Sexual Abuse and Exploitation of Children. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to our first Survivor Conference. We are thrilled to have each one of you today as we celebrate the achievements and hard work of our PSN. Your presence makes this event truly special, and we're honored to share this with you. Today, we will highlight the PSN as a survivor network actively collaborating to lead and inform IJM and partners policy, projects, programs, and services. In order to create meaningful progress, we motivate survivors and partners to collaborate, design, and implement policies, programs, and initiatives that support both survivors and communities we serve. We will recognize outstanding contribution and accomplishment in our field. We have an exciting program lineup featuring speeches from my fellow survivors and distinguished partners, and along with the Q&A session. As I close, I would like to share a video with you about the PSN or Survivor or the Philippine Survivor Network. And in this video, you will notice that some of the faces of the survivors are blurred in order to protect their privacy. Thank you once again for being here and support. Let's enjoy today together as we celebrate success and excellence. Welcome and have a wonderful time. Thank you. Before the Philippine Survivor Network came to be, two survivor lead groups supported by International Justice Mission were formed. In Metro Manila, Standing Together Advocating Rights, or STAR, was a group of survivors established in 2009 and strengthened in 2015 in partnership with She Works Made in Hope. This group supported survivors of child sexual abuse and trafficking to break the cycle of exploitation and secure their freedom by providing education, sustainable livelihood opportunities, and care in the healing process. In Cebu, the Survivors Mentoring and Advocating for Restorative Transformation, or SMART, group was also formed. What began in 2012 as a mentorship program for Cebu-based survivors evolved into a formal group by 2019. Following the survivors' shared desire to support one another, drive positive change, and grow together. Later that year, conversation about combining the two groups began. With the support of IJM, both STAR and SMART envisioned to build a unified network. Despite the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, they were able to form an organizational structure, develop training modules, and expand their membership. In February 2023, PSN was officially launched, and a year later, it was registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. To this day, the PSN continues to empower its members through training, advocacy, and collaboration with IJM and other partners.
We are Philippine Survivor Network. We are an all-inclusive group of survivors and leaders who desire and pursue safe communities through justice system that protect the most vulnerable people.
Kaibigan at ang Diyos ang iyong kasama. Sa puso, hatid ay pag-asa. Pangako niya ito sa ating lahat.
Inspired us to move forward and to do better. One of the happiest moments in my life is when I found the courage to let go of the things that I cannot change in the past.
Asul, pula o dilaw.
Everyone has a story, and every story deserves to be heard. Philippine Survivor Network are people who are passionate and have the heart to encourage other people to help stop the violence. We are committed to help them in every step of the way until they are fully healed. That there is a better life ahead of them and there is hope. Other survivors, remember that there is no journey that is steady or constant. It can be dark and chaotic. But at the end of the day, looking forward to those rainbows after every rain, everything would be worth it. So,
Wherever you are right now, just keep going and know that we are always at your back and cheering for you. I know that together we can do something about it. Be the light.
Buhay ay patuloy, basta't manalig. Humayo at magsaya. Sandigan mo'y pag-asa.
We also encourage other survivors to stand up, fight for their rights, and let them know that life continues after violence.
Ay, patuloy ang Diyos na gagabay. Sa kalinga at magmamahal.
There are people who are willing to listen to their stories, and together we fight with them.
Laot nilang buhay ay patuloy, basta't manalig. Humayo
Again, we are the Philippine Survivor Network.
sandigan mo'y pag-asa, pag-asa.
Thank you, Attorney Law and Mark Neal, for your powerful messages. Just a quick and fun fact about the background song that was used at the video. It was actually composed and recorded by the survivor leaders way back before, even before the PSN started. We now move to the key part of our program, a presentation of the report entitled Voices of Empowerment, Mapping Key Lesson and Survivor Engagement. To our online participants, please feel free to type any questions that you may have at the Q&A section so we can include them later. Now we may call on Ruby and Liberty to share about the Voices of Empowerment report, and let's listen to them with open hearts and open minds. And also, as a reminder of our house rules, to protect the identity of the survivor leader, please refrain from taking screenshots of the speakers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruby, one of the PSN survivor leaders, and I'm here to share about the collaboration between IJM and PSN. When partners like IJM engage with us survivors, it highlights the importance of incorporating our insights into the models and materials they created while ensuring we are approached in a trauma informed way. Just a brief history as to how this report was created. In November 2021, the IJM released a study entitled Child Protective Prosecutions, a strength based child centered approach to assess prosecutions results, or the Child Protective Prosecutions Study. Through this study, their team realized the importance of survivor input in the materials that they were developing. This gave way into inviting survivor leaders like myself to a series of focus group discussions and roundtable discussions related to the study. To better share its impact, they intentionally documented and analyzed their activities with survivors, which laid the foundations for developing the survivor engagement report entitled Voices of Empowerment, Mapping Key Lessons on Ethical and Effective Survivor Engagement. Survivor leaders helped validate and refine the study. They also helped to plan and implement the 3 roundtable discussions with partners. The report represents IJM's learning from their engagement with survivors. It offers public and private agencies, service providers, survivor networks, and survivor leaders a practical guide for survivor engagement. Throughout the report, development, survivor feedback, and validation were collected to give more depth, context, and understanding of their engagement experience. The report provides a replicable and adaptable survivor engagement workflow. Identify effective practices throughout the engagement with survivor leaders. Details the practical challenges of engaging survivors, and IJM's respond to these challenges and presents an analysis of the impact of the activities on the survivor leader participants and the outcomes of the engagement. Ultimately, we believed that if survivors are engaged in a trauma informed way, partners will not only achieve pragmatic outcomes as they refine their interventions, but the safeguarding of the survivor's well being is also ensured. This also means that they are empowered to continue partnering with and contribute fully or directly to the mission. Now, I'd like to share with you three guiding principles that were used throughout the engagement process. The following principles guided the planning, preparation, and execution of all survivor engagement activities throughout the focus group discussions or FGD and roundtable discussions or RTD series. First, engage survivors in a trauma informed way. Protocols or guidelines must be in place to prevent and respond to any potential risk and trauma triggers that may come up during activities with survivors. Next, design activities with a survivor centered approach. Focusing on the survivor helps support their healing, prevents further harm, and strengthens our ability to make our own choices. And lastly, secure informed consent for engagement events. Informed consent is important for us because this is a tool that can help protect the survivors and partners in ensuring that both sides are well informed about the activity and the expectations. Through the consent process, we, the survivors, are able to practice our right to choose the level of participation and how much personal information can be used or shared. Part of the report documented how the involvement in the Child Protective Prosecutions FGD and RTD series impacted us survivors. Among the survivor participants, there was an increased interest to learn more about legal concepts and procedures. There was also a collective desire to improve in public speaking, and levels of participation and ownership increased as well. And we experienced this when we were able to choose our own roles for each roundtable discussion event, and we were also able to develop our own unique scripts and talking points. This shows a stake of ownership in the survivors' messages and genuine intent to add value to the activity. It was very impactful that we had the opportunity to improve our public speaking skills. It allowed us to share our stories, which also inspired us and built our confidence. Next, I will discuss the outcome of survivor engagement. Engaging survivor leaders in the review and refinement of the Child Protective Prosecution study and in the presentation of the study to global audiences proved to have an immense effect on the outcomes of the activity. IJM not IJM achieved not only their objective of promoting child protective prosecutions globally, but the team was also able to first increase the value of the child protective prosecutions study through its refinement and validation by survivor leaders. Second, build a strong and effective awareness campaign on child protective prosecutions globally through the advocacy leadership of survivor leaders. Third, demonstrate and prove to stakeholders and implementing partners the impact and value of child protective prosecutions through the affirmation of survivor leaders. Fourth, amplify and highlight the value of survivor voice and leadership. And finally, craft a replicable and adaptable survivor engagement workflow that is validated by survivor leaders. And at this point, here is a visual presentation of the survivor engagement workflow that IJM Center was able to document and develop alongside survivor leaders. So you see opportunity. This first step in the workflow is to identify opportunities to engage with survivors. Example of opportunities are research projects, policy review, process design, program improvement, advocacy events, and etc. Next is to identify and assess survivors who can participate in engagement and advocacy related activities. Third is to make sure that survivors are aware and are able to confirm their level of involvement through the informed consent process. Fourth, we survivors are able to support in preparing for the activity. This includes provisions such as orientation and review of the subject matter, planning and coordination meetings, regular check in sessions, rehearsals, and logistical support. This is followed by supporting survivors in actual engagement event or the main activity. Partner support and accompaniment help us feel more comfortable and confident in our activities. Next step is to facilitate feedback and debriefing sessions with the survivors. We should have the chance to process and provide feedback to improve the process and their experience or our experience of the activity. Lastly, the organization should be proactive in implementing changes based on survivor feedback to improve the process, policy, activity, or the program. These 7 steps are helpful and highly recommended for partners and other stakeholders when working with survivor leaders. And my hope is that you are encouraged by this discussion to really amplify survivor empowerment through partnership, as I truly believe that survivor engagement is not only a best practice, but is rather a moral imperative. Survivor leaders shouldn't just be the center of your stories, but co authors of the solutions you develop. Thank you. And now I will hand it over to my fellow survivor leader, Liberty, to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. Hi, everyone. My name is Liberty, a survivor leader of the Philippine Survivor Network, and I am also a registered social worker. Earlier, Ruby presented the survivor engagement workflow. Now, I also want to share the tool called the Survivor Engagement Workflow Checklist. This was developed by IJM and the survivor consultants after seeing the need for a simplified list of tasks for partners when working with survivors that follows the survivor engagement workflow or process. On the screen, you will see a sample portion of the checklist. Just feel free to let us know if you're interested to learn more about this tool. The survivor engagement process also poses some challenges to survivors. 3 themes or categories stood out among the challenges listed. One is the risk of triggering trauma when engaging survivors during the activities. There are activities that might trigger the emotions of survivors, especially when they're asked to recall their past or when they are reminded of their trauma. This may manifest in different tendencies or behaviors. Safe and ethical survivor engagement can be done. Partners should be mindful of the risk of triggers and ensure that necessary and proactive measures are in place to protect and support survivor as they engage in their activities. In my experience, there are times that I feel triggered, challenged, and pressured in different advocacy activities. But at the same time, I am grateful that I was well supported throughout the activities and that I was able to bravely share my insights and recommendations. We feel that we are heard, and I am grateful to be part of the event like this. Next is the challenge of balancing personal responsibilities and opportunities for advocacy. Survivor engagement activities require the commitment of time and effort, not only from the organizers, but also from survivor participants. In my case, as much as I want to to be active in all of the activities, I am limited because of my full time job and responsibilities with my family that I also need to prioritize. Short notice invitations and conflicting schedules are challenging for us too. Organizers must understand these limitations and support survivors to be informed ahead of time and in agreeing to set meeting or activity dates that are also in favor of the survivor's schedule. And lastly, how to properly account and compensate for survivors' times and expertise. There is a cost burden on survivors when they participate in meetings and activities such as expenses related to travel, accommodation, food, and etc. Also, some survivors do not receive their daily wage when they're absent from their work just to attend the activity or meeting. Organizers should recognize that these costs should not be shouldered by the survivors. Support and compensation for survivors are highly recommended. Despite the challenges, IJM and survivors noted the effective practices that meet the needs and fill the gaps in survivor engagement. So, as the last part of my presentation, I'm going to share with you 7 out of 13 practices that survivors affirmed as effective for us. First is the thorough identification and assessment process of survivor participants. Second, review and renewal of informed consent. Third, preparation and review of subject matter with survivor participants. Fourth, provision of logistic support. Fifth, availability of a dedicated support system during the activity. Sixth, feedbacking and debriefing after key events. And finally, compensation for the time and expertise. We want survivor voices to be more powerful and evident in child protection materials, programs, services, research, and even in policy development. We hope that from lessons we learned through this report, we will be able to provide guidance on how to effectively and ethically engage survivors so that partners like you will be able to explore and invest in more opportunities to develop new materials and create policies in collaboration with survivors. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Liberty and Ruby. And I am sure that our online participants also have their insights and affirmation from our presenters. And please feel free to share your thoughts through the chat box so that we can all engage with one another. For the next part, we will hear insights from our partners. We invited some of our partners to respond and reflect on what they've witnessed today and how they can continue strengthening collaboration with survivors on their various initiatives. We are grateful to hear from 5 of our dedicated partners, and each of them played a very important role in this movement. Yes, first off, may we call on Miss Isabel Chin and Miss Danielle Marie Eperanyo from Communitils.
Thank you, Thea and Barbie. Hello, everyone. I'm Isabel. You can call me Belle. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to contribute to this conference and also to be working with these wonderful people. So, I'm one of the stewards of Communitales, and we are an organization advocating for the human animal bond with our therapy dogs. Our community is composed mostly by people in creatives, human resources, corporate, and also health related professions. So, a very diverse mix. Our first time working with IJM and PSN was back in 2023 to 2024 on a trauma informed animal assisted therapy program. And a lot of our members, considering our various backgrounds, were worried because our activities were mostly with kids in schools, working adults in offices, and occasionally also health facilities. So, because we wanted to be able to add value and, of course, not contribute anything harmful or non therapeutic. Yeah. So, we consulted the IJM team and they guided us in consulting and interacting with the survivor leaders. Later on, we also further consulted the Philippine Survivor Network and their survivor consultants. So, with the Voices of Empowerment, I see a lot of what we have learned from them as we work together and build friendships. One significant learning we had is also made concrete in the report in one of the key steps in the survivor engagement workflow, which is informed consent and the continuous process of getting informed consent. Additionally, in the effective practices section, I would also like to highlight the feedback and debriefing aligned with the survivor centered approach. Given that the trauma informed animal assisted therapy program we were co designing was for the survivors, we wanted to be intentional in ensuring that they would like it would meet needs, and it would also share joy. All in all, the Voices of Empowerment is a good guide for current and future partners of the Philippine Survivor Network, giving us concrete steps to follow to ensure that everyone are able to meet individual and team goals while learning and having a great time together.
Thank you, Belle, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm Dandan Pareño, a mental health professional and one of the co-designers and facilitators of the trauma-informed animal assisted therapy modules, which we co-developed in partnership with select survivor leaders from the Philippine Survivor Network. This is actually my first time reading the survivor engagement workflow in its full form. And it was a bit of an aha moment for me because even if the steps weren't introduced to us explicitly back then, I recognized them as the very path we had been gently guided through during the process. Looking back, the International Justice Mission didn't just hand us a structure. They nudged us with much gentleness and intention towards an approach that was thoughtful, respectful, and always centered on the voices of survivor leaders and what would be empowering for them. That kind of guidance is something I'm deeply grateful for, especially because many members of our communities who took part in the project came from non clinical backgrounds: advocates, animal stewards, volunteers, people with so much heart and passion for this collaboration, but also with a lot of initial uncertainty about how to get it right in such a sensitive space. What really stayed with me was how much I learned from co designing the TIAAT sessions with survivor leaders. It reminded me that no matter how trained or prepared we are, survivor leaders are the ones who truly know what safety, support, and dignity look like in their own lives. That kind of process doesn't just improve the work, it transforms the people doing it. Seeing the workflow now affirms what I experienced back then, that when survivor engagement is done with care and intention, it becomes a way of learning from, not just working for, the survivors. Thank you all for the opportunity to share what I've learned from all of you.
Thank you so much, Miss Dan and Miss Bell. Also, I wanted to thank you for including and involving the survivor leaders in every step of co-designing the animal-assisted therapy sessions and collaborating with us with gentleness, of course, and in a very trauma-informed way.
Up next, we will hear from another beloved partner who is with us online. Introducing Miss Chad from Ellison Foundation.
Hi everyone, my name is Chad from the Ellison Foundation. The Ellison Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing evidence-based, survivor-centered programs for individuals who have experienced human trafficking and gender-based violence. The SLC, or the Survivor Leadership Council, work closely with other staff and board members of the Ellison Foundations to make sure that their programs and research are truly survivor centered. The survivor engagement workflow really resonates with me as a survivor leader myself, and they are all important to have effective survivor engagement. And I have three effective practices and a challenge that stands out to me. The first one is a survivor agency to decide own level of participation. Respecting boundaries is absolutely crucial for building trust and ensuring a profound feeling of safety for everyone, every survivor participating in activities and programs. It's vital to remember that each survivor's journey and capacity are unique. Therefore, we must be genuinely empowered to contribute in a way that feels inherently safe and manageable for us. Rather than conforming to a preset expectation, this might mean offering options like providing feedback anonymously, participating through written submissions instead of speaking aloud, having the ability to leave an activity at any moment without explanation, or even choosing to observe rather than actively engage. I also completely agree that screening and aligning with third party service providers is paramount and deserves significant emphasis. This crucial step directly prevents re traumatizations for survivors when external partners share the same trauma informed approach. It ensures consistency and builds a protective environment. This allows survivors to focus on their healing journey and continued progress rather than being forced to start from the scratch by reestablishing trust or navigating insensitive interactions. The last one is the emphasis on a timely response and action and feedback. The ongoing check-ins during activities is crucial because while some other survivors might feel comfortable sharing their experiences in a group setting, others could be easily triggered, leading to serious emotional distress or re-traumatization. I also deeply relate to the challenge of balancing survivors' work responsibilities with opportunity for advocacy. As much as I want to engage more and do more advocacy work, time is really constrained for me. Being compensated for our contributions is incredibly important. It allows us to continue supporting our families financially while doing this vital work. This isn't just about personal gain for me, but about making sustainable participation possible. The workflow provides a clear step by step roadmap that embeds trauma informed principles at every stage. This is not about being rigid, but about ensuring that crucial safety measures are never overlooked. It acts as a safety net for both survivors and the facilitators. It helps to standardize ethical considerations, making sure that the key elements are respecting boundaries and not demanding personal trauma narratives become ingrained practice rather than optional considerations. This prevents accidental re traumatizations and builds genuine trust. This workflow validates the idea that building trust and meaningful relationship with survivors takes time and consistent effort. It would guide service providers to prioritize regular check-ins, feedback loops, and sustained communication, which are essential for fostering a sense of psychological safety and genuine partnership. It also reinforces the understanding that survivors' voices are valuable, not just for a specific project, but as ongoing contributors to advocacy and systemic change. The workflow also focuses on identifying and assessing participants appropriately, and having a dedicated support system available continuously is invaluable. This would help service providers to be proactive in anticipating potential triggers and having immediate qualified support ready rather than reacting only after an issue arises. That's all from me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Miss Chad.
And next, we would like to introduce another key partner of PSN and IJM, which is very close to my heart. She works. May we call in front Miss Cristel Marcy Chrysostom.
Thank you so much, Thea and Barbie, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Marcos Ostomo, and I represent Made in Hope Philippines. She works as a program staff. In our journey with women survivors of sex trafficking, every chapter has been a time of learning, and we continue to do so. We do not consider ourselves experts, but rather we are co sojourners. I am taking this opportunity to thank the International Justice Mission and Philippine Survivor Network for this endeavor. The Voices of Empowerment has helped us, She Works, by further affirming and identifying what we have already been doing and allowing us also to mirror and further reflect in terms of which part of our program needs strengthening and reevaluation. All the effective approaches you have identified resonated with us. But I would like to focus more on the aspect of the survivor's agency to decide their own level of participation. In She Works, we only desire and intend to help survivors holistically. But we have learned, and we are still learning how to continually and gently usher our women survivors toward personal decision making. Most of the time, in the spirit of charity and community, we are always tempted to give and provide everything that survivors would need. And sometimes we catch ourselves becoming too enmeshed in their personal lives and family. It is important for us to admit that we may have been too involved in some cases, and that we are realizing more and more that it is healthier and more sustainable for both survivor and the care provider if the survivor's ability to make their own decisions and take responsibility for them will be further strengthened. More so, we would like to help our survivors see and take ownership of their own potentials for further growth beyond what the organization can offer. This does not mean at all that we are abandoning them, but rather allowing survivors to fly while continually journeying with them still. With regards to the survivor engagement workflow, I would like to put emphasis on the aspect of identification and assessment. It has always been essential to assess the readiness of survivors in terms of commitment and participation. When this initial step has been done effectively, then it spares both the survivors and the care providers from all possible concerns that may occur later in the process, which may affect the overall involvement of both parties. This part of the workflow also complements what I have specified earlier regarding the survivor's agency to decide. Joining alongside women survivors of sex trafficking comes with the need for identification and assessment in the different humanistic domains. In the context of She Works, though, discernment plays a major role as well. Women survivors in the She Works community respond to spiritual formation. This has become the center of our community's formation and a cornerstone. Time and again, the spirituality of women survivors has become a source of their healing and restoration. As part of our women survivors' personal assessment, they are given the avenue and space to assess themselves first, alongside their relationship with other survivors and the staff. Therefore, allowing both the survivors and the staff to go through the identification, assessment, and discernment process together. All the approaches, workflow, and challenges expressed in the voices of empowerment surely resonate with She Works. and perhaps with other organizations in the anti trafficking realm as well. But what really struck us upon reading and reflecting on the anecdotes from the survivors who are key players in this wonderful work, Voices of Empowerment, together with the experiences of the focal persons, are first, a strong sense of trust fostered within, and secondly, collaboration. It is such a delight and encouragement to see how the deep confidence and trust of vocal persons towards survivors has allowed the survivors to trust their focal persons as well. But most importantly, to trust their very own potentials. Through the voices of empowerment, the mutuality of the roles that both the care provider and the survivor need to play has shown the impact of collaboration. The care provider can always think of ways and interventions, but it is the survivor's openness, perseverance, and courage that will pave the way towards real empowerment and transformation. Finally, I would like to thank every survivor who have given their trust toward their social workers, care providers, and mentors, though this may not come easy at once. And I would also like to acknowledge the social workers, care providers, and mentors for your tireless efforts in providing such a safe space to allow survivors develop the kind of trust that allows them to bloom. Once again, IJM and PSN, thank you all so much for inspiring us always and in all ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Cristel. And I firsthand experienced how they treated us survivor leaders with so much gentleness and, of course, with love. And I wanted to echo what Ati Chris said that they continually usher the the survivor leaders in their own decision making. It's like giving us freedom to think and, of course, to decide on our own. It is still somehow an affirmation that we are still in control. And thank you for always believing and trusting our potentials.
Finally, we would like to introduce the next partner who will provide his insight to the Voice of Empowerment report. Would like to call on Mr. Mark Hernandez from partner White and Case.
Thank you. So first off, hi, I'm Mark Hernandez. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm from White and Case, a long-standing partner of IGM. So quick introduction about myself. I've been with White and Case for almost 6 years now. I'm the site lead for a team of over 100 professionals in our marketing, business development, and practice solutions team here in Manila. I also head up our Manila branding and internal communications initiative. So, how are we involved with White and Case here, with IGM here in Manila? I've been working closely with Jeanette and Attorney Law to further deepen the relationship of White and Case and IJM through a mentorship program. At the moment, we are at the design phase where volunteers from White and Case, I see Gino and Santi here, who have volunteered to be part of that program. We will partner with IGM to create a pilot program aimed to jumpstart our mentorship program. Looking at the survivor engagement workflow, we start with the guiding principles. We are working on making sure that our volunteers are equipped to engage with survivors in a trauma informed way. I'm working with Jeanette, Attorney Law, and the PSN to put this together for our volunteers even before we engage in our design phase for this project. Also, part of the guiding principles is to design the activity with a survivor centered approach. This is the main driver why we are working and looking at collaborating in the development of the program. The survivor engagement workflow gives us a clear step by step process that ensures we are not just checking boxes and that we are meeting with survivors where they are at their pace. It helps maintain the awareness of the guiding principles. As an example, in identifying opportunities, as I mentioned earlier, we aim to collaborate in the design of the program. The collaboration will be through the co-creation and evaluation of the program. This builds ownership, trust, and empowerment throughout the process. Another part of the guiding principle and the workflow is informed consent. This is where we will lean on Jeanette and attorney law to help us with ensuring that the partnership we shall engage in is with informed consent from all parties. The survivor engagement workflow also includes a step on feedback and debriefing. The feedback loop is thorough. It allows us to improve the program with survivors. In the long run, I think the workflow that was shared will strengthen the program where survivors feel safe, heard, and supported. They step into roles as co creators, leaders, and change agents. That's powerful and sustainable. As I mentioned, we are at the beginning of this journey with IJM, which is why preparation and support aren't afterthoughts. They are foundational. From the design to the launch of the pilot to the program itself, and finally the debrief and feedback loop. We hope to be able to make the pilot of the mentorship program a success, so much so that we can eventually grow the program. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you again for our three partners for those insights and affirming words. Let's give them all a round of applause. Personally, Barbie, I am very, very grateful to them, and I am indeed encouraged. Survivor engagement doesn't stop with just the Voices of Empowerment report. In this conference, we also wanted to hear about projects and activities where the survivor engagement workflow was put into practice. We now proceed to a panel discussion featuring other survivors' co-led projects and materials showcasing innovation, resilience, and hope.
At this point, let us welcome our survivor leaders from PSN and our beloved partner from the Interagency Council Against Trafficking. They will serve as our panel as sharers for this portion. Let's give a round of applause to them and our panel discussion moderator, Thea. And as mentioned earlier, please feel free to type your questions at the Q&A section of Zoom so the moderators can include them in question and answer portion later or answer them directly via chat.
All right. Let's start with the PSN and IJM's joint project with Communitales. We have here Ate Monique to share her experience about the trauma-informed animal-assisted therapy. So, hi, Ate Monique, and what was the project about? And tell us a bit more about your experience.
Hello, Thea, and good day, everyone. I'm Monique, one of the active survivor leader from Philippine Survivor Network and survivor consultant with a project with Communitales. The project was called Trauma Informed Animal Assisted Therapy, where therapy dogs are integrated into trauma informed mental health intervention to reduce stigma, promote resilience, and provide survivor leaders from the PSN with meaningful support and non-judgmental environment. The project was implemented for more than a year of co-designing of the modules and the actual pilot testing of the therapy sessions with select survivors. I had the opportunity to serve as a consultant for the modules and a participant of the TIAET sessions. Upon hearing this, I was very excited because I am an animal lover. In fact, I have one dog, four cats, one turtle, and 9 rabbits sa aming bahay. Yeah, and I realized that being with gentle animals can be a healing to humans too. As a consultant, I underwent an application process after the opportunity was shared to us. After being selected, I was involved in co-designing the content of the modules and was assigned to help out in logistic and coordinations with other survivor participants. The time I spent working on the project was well compensated. I can say that this was very helpful because I didn't need to shell out money just to make or just to do my tasks. I learned a lot from this project because it helped me develop skills in leading various tasks, including logistics, hosting, facilitating, and more. I also enjoyed working closely with IJM and communities. The entire team was very kind, friendly, and approachable. Doc Ginger, Doc Denden, and Miss Bell, and even the human animal teams taught us what we needed to learn. And I felt free and not shy um, to engage with them and share my recommendations. They always make sure that I am comfortable in the task I am assigned to. I was also a participant of the three animal assisted therapy modules and sessions. I felt that our thoughts were important to the partners, and they always asked for a consent in every session. They were easy to be with, which made it effortless for my fellow survivor leaders to engage. We gained new knowledge about animals or dogs, such as when they are comfortable and when they are not, body mindfulness, safety, and acceptance were the different topics of the sessions. One of my favorite part was interacting with the dogs. The first time I saw dogs, they immediately captured my attention because they were so cute, especially when we're allowed to pet and play with them. I felt like there was a magic or positive energy from them. During the project, I was actually dealing with personal problem. I was losing interest in everything, and I felt like I was losing my purpose. But every time we had a session, I will get excited. I think, yes, I have the chance to see Chichi and Smith. Maybe I can hug Hugo, Rusty, Ramen, and Hermosa again. I don't know where it came from, but it energized me. Like something was pushing me to continue. This project was not only a productive activity. It not it not just a task given to me as a consultant, but it was also a very healing experience. I really suggest for the modules to continue to be organized for other survivors. You can get so much joy in interacting with animals. The comfort they give is one of a kind and really important. Thank you so much, IJM and Community Tales, for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ate Monique. And I agree with everything that you said since we work together as project analysts with Communitales. And also, I just wanted to highlight how Communitales was very, very careful and very consistent with following the engagement workflow. Every animal assisted therapy sessions, they're really, really asking for the survivor's consent. And some survivor leaders are already like used up. We already did this last AAP, but then it's very important since it's part of the workflow. And I also remember how the team valued our expertise and compensated us very well. And thank you again, Ati Monique. And to proceed, let us call Crystal to share more about the Brace Project. So, how's your experience with the Brace Project?
Yes, hello Thea and everyone. Good afternoon. I am Crystal. I am the Vice Chairperson for Membership of PSN, and I was also a Survivor Consultant of IGM Philippines. So, the Building Resilience and Agency through Crafts and Expressive Arts, also known as the Brace Project, is a joint project between Philippine Survivor Network, the Austrian Embassy Manila, and International Justice Mission. This project provides a series of therapeutic workshops that help PSN members explore their emotions and express themselves creatively. I was one of the PSN survivors that got invited to form a working group for the development of the project proposals and organizing different workshop activities here in Metro Manila and in Cebu. Over the course of a year, survivors from Luzon, Cebu, and Mindanao engage in three distinct workshops focusing on pottery, photography, and painting, each tailored to enhance our coping skills and promote emotional resiliency. The first activity was pottery workshop. Guided by an experienced pottery artist, the pottery workshop offered a hands-on experience of working with clay, allowing us to channel our emotions and experiences into tangible forms. Through the therapeutic process of interacting with clay, we explored how to express our resilience, transformation, and self-discovery. For our second activity, it is the photography workshop. In this workshop, we had the opportunity to capture the moments of beauty, strength, and hope with the help of a skilled photographer. Photography help encourage mindfulness and awareness and provide a sense of agency. The camera served as a tool to help them reframe their narratives, which help provide a sense of empowerment. And lastly, our last activity is painting. In this workshop, we were given space to express ourselves freely through paint. With the support of a skilled facilitator, we were able to experiment with colors, techniques, and textures to convey our stories and emotions on blank canvas. Shared on the screen are some of our pictures in different workshops. And I would also like to have this opportunity to thank our service providers, which is the Bumi and Ash for pottery, which has branches here in Manila and in Cebu. For 913 for the photography, they also flew from Manila to Cebu just to share their expertise using the photography. And lastly is Miss Nina Del Mundo for the painting. They also flew here in Manila to Cebu just to share their expertise of painting. So, and I also want to share my experience as being part of the project working group and as a participant of the workshop. As this Brace project is the very first project of PSN. Yes, so it's our first project that we PSN officers handled or organized the project. So as a part of working group, I learned how to create concept notes under the guidance of IJM. This also allows me to be equipped and develop more concept notes and activity proposals in the future. This also enhanced my skills in my role as an officer, particularly as in the membership, to interact and coordinate with other survivor leaders despite our geographical challenges. As I helped organize the project, I also had the opportunity to become one of the participants in all the activities. Among the three activities I joined, my favorite was pottery. It was my first time and I had the best experience. I was able to relax while I was molding my own clay and keeps me focused on the art. Clear my mind away from the thoughts that worries me. Reflecting on my inner state, as if the clay was myself, I am wedged and challenged. With the patience of molding the clay, I appreciate my imperfections and distinctive qualities. That made me realize that flaws may add to our overall beauty and authenticity and be valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Crystal. Actually, that's my favorite too, pottery, because it's very, very therapeutic and very relaxing as well. So yeah, indeed, we have a lot of projects where we partners and survivors can collaborate on. And as for my team, together with the IJM Center to End OSEC, and together with my co-survivor consultants, Crystal, Mark Neil, and Ate Patricia, and other survivor leaders, we're also working on two training modules for the Philippine Survivor Network so that we can increase the capacity of our members. So I hope my fellow survivor PSN members are very, very excited to learn more about it soon. And last but not least, of course, we have Miss Camille Bayani from the Department of Justice Interagency Council Against Trafficking, or DOJ IACAT.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Thea. Thank you for the introduction. So, I'm here to present the IACAT's HCD approach in the engagement policy and the human-centered design approach. So, this basically focuses on how the IACAT utilize the human-centered design approach in developing our programs and policies, specifically the survivor engagement guidelines. So, um, first, just like to give you an overview of what IACAT is. So, IACAT is the coordinating body that oversees the monitoring and implementation of anti-trafficking in persons laws in the Philippines. So just a brief overview of IACAT's composition. It is co-chaired by the DOJ and the DSWD, and our latest addition to the membership is IJM, wherein they focus on the children sector. And then I am specifically under IACAT Secretariat, focused on the implementation of policies and programs that is directed against trafficking in persons. So, next slide. So, our policies and programs are guided by the implementation of the Fourth National Strategic Action Plan Against Trafficking in Persons, or the SP4. So, under this SP4, we have the Key Result Area 2, wherein it is focused in protection and reintegration, wherein one of the key outcomes that we have embodied in this strategic plan is that relevant agencies, including government and non-government organizations at the local and national level, should refer, support, engage, and empower victim survivors. Through this mandate from the SP4, we were able to create guidelines in the systematic engagement of survivors on policy development, program design, and implementation, including monitoring and evaluation of anti-trafficking in persons. So, this guidelines is this shall provide guide as this guidance shall provide us the procedures on the systematic engagement of survivor leaders. And four of its objectives is to enable the survivors to share their voices, empower them, and this shall enable us to advocate for victim-centered reforms and create safe, secure, and supportive environment for them. So the human-centered design is an approach wherein we is a method of innovation and solving problems that focuses on understanding the customer's needs. Well, in this case, the survivors. And in order to design solutions that meet their needs. So it includes identifying the problem to designing the policies specifically catered to them. So in the drafting process, we included the survivors in several series of meetings, consultations, and the TWG meetings specifically wrapped up last 2024. And after that, we conducted a consultation with the survivor leaders, including She Works and the PSN, with IJM and GoJust, in drafting the zero draft of the training module that we will be utilizing in the engagement of these survivor leaders. So, uh, aside from the survivor engagement guidelines, we also uh, gathered the survivors' invaluable inputs in the Recovery and Reintegration Program for Traffic Persons Guidelines. These RRPTP guidelines shall be revised by the DSWD, and we were given the opportunity for the survivors to give their invaluable inputs in how we should revise these guidelines. And then we also drafted guidelines on the referral system involving traffic OFWs. And again, we also included the inputs of these survivor leaders. And in the last session of the consultation, we also conducted a key informant interview of the victim identification guidelines. These guidelines shall be presented in the upcoming regular council meeting, and it shall be approved. And we at the IACAT are very thankful for the survivors' inputs on this one. And then, so after these consultations, we just identified a few challenges and lessons in engaging these survivors. So first, as government agency, we don't have easy access to our budget. So this is one of our limitation. And in the language barrier, since policies are often in the English language. So we had to make sure that the survivors are we had to make sure that they understand what the engagement and what they are participating in. And then of course connectivity, since not we can we can fly them in as for all the meetings. We had to make sure that all the survivors that we engage with during the meetings had good connectivity during these meetings. And then, but the lessons here are we were able to garner enough of the survivor's perspective in our policy development, which made us sensitive in implementing better policies, better suited for them. And this also allowed us to empower survivors, which in turn also empowered policymakers and the decision makers in our agency to create better reforms. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Camille, and also thank you for sharing the challenges and lessons, which we'll definitely learn from. So yeah, let's give them a warm of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you to all our panelists. Let's all give them a round of applause. We will be opening the floor for live discussions. We invite all of you to participate by asking questions, sending in comments, sharing insights. And if you're on Zoom, feel free to type your questions in the chat or use the raise hand features. And for our in-person participants, feel free to raise your hand as well. Well done. Thea and panel speakers, thank you for sharing those very interesting activities. I'm sure there are a lot of more activities with survivors currently ongoing and planned for the future. Hopefully, we get the future more of these projects and innovations in the next coming survivor conferences.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Barbie. And at this point, we are now opening the floor for a discussion of questions the participants may have. Our survivor leaders and partner speakers are ready to answer the questions that you may have. And of course, Barbie and I are also happy to answer some of the questions too. So, yeah.
Let's start with the first question.
So the first question is, what is your hope for the PSN in the next few years? Anyone from our survivor leaders who wanted to answer? Okay, let's go, Crystal.
Yes, so for my hopes for PSN in the next few years is as a vice chairperson for membership is I would like to have more members, more survivor leaders in the next few years. Also to have more projects and activities as this projects and activities brings us together despite our geographical locations. and also more engagements with partners so we could share our expertise.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Thank you. Anyone else who wanted to answer the question? Barbie, do you have like insights about that question?
Yes, of course. So, my hope for the Philippine Survivor Network in the next few years is to grow stronger and to be more united, where more survivor leaders are empowered and, of course, equipped and actively leading change in their communities. And, of course, where our voices are continuously heard, values, and reflected in national and global actions to end exploitation of abuse.
Thank you so much, Barbie, for that question. So let's see what question we still have here.
Okay, for we have another question. So, what is your hope for the PSN in the next few years? Why is informed consent important to you? Um, like, how about you, Thea? What would you answer be?
Okay, so for me, informed consent is very important, like what we've repeating a while ago. Since informed consent, like it gives us affirmation that we are in control up to what extent or up to what we wanted to like participate, and you know we know our level of involvement, and also we are not being forced to give our output or feedback.
Yes. Does anyone else from PSN want to answer the questions?
Let's call
Yes.
on Ruby.
Yeah. So just to add on what Thea said, if you remember, I was the one discussing that part earlier of survivor engagement workflow or voices of empowerment. So for me, the importance of consent process or informed consent process is this is to explain or to inform both the survivor and the partner that we are engaging what are the expected, and to also make sure that the survivor the commitment that the survivor is getting into is clear to her or to him, and to make sure that partner and the survivor leaders are both protected.
Thank you so much, Ruby, and then I echo that uh, it also protects the partners and the survivor leaders. And now for the next question, this question is for our partners. So it says here that what excites you most about collaborating with survivors? So do we have like partners here in person that wanted to answer the question? Anyone? Yes, Miss Dan.
Hi, everyone. I'm most looking forward to learning from the survivor leaders, like the continuous process of it, especially Community Tales has been inspired to partner and maybe create more projects involving survivors. Currently, we have an ongoing project with female adolescent survivors in partnership with the National Center for Mental Health, and our learnings from the survivor leaders and survivor consultants in our first project with them really informed a lot of how we're supposed to go about the group therapy modules, how we should interact, especially with significantly younger individuals. So hopefully in the next coming years, I look forward to more partnership and more learnings between Community Tales and the Philippine Survivor Network as well.
Thank you, Miss Dan. And we are very excited to collaborate more with Communitels and also with other partners. And for those who are joining online, our partners, anyone who wanted to answer the question? Okay, let's call on Miss Crystal first, and then Miss Chad.
To our dear PSN, our survivors, as we now witness how your voices are making a mark in our society and nation, my dream, and it excites me, is that through your voices, other survivors may also find courage to make their own voices heard. Yours is a powerful voice, impactful, humbling, inspiring, worth hearing, and worth fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miss Crystal. And now we also wanted to hear from Miss Chad online.
Yes, as a survivor leader, what excites me more is the feeling of belongingness and camaraderie together with other survivors. There's no judgment or no right or wrong answers, and every experience and voice is heard and given importance. And surrounded by other survivors, enhance our healing journey, and it empowers us greatly. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miss Chad, and we appreciate that answer. So yeah, we're still reading other comments that we can answer right now. So
So we have another question. So what is your message to survivors who are interested to also become a survivor leader? So this addressed to the PSN.
anyone? Yes, Ate Monique.
Yeah, my message to survivors who are interested to become a survivor leader, simply just don't be shy. And if you want to join us, there's a lot that you can learn attending different activities and trainings. Let's learn together and don't be afraid. You are not alone in this journey. We are here to support you. Together, let's fight the violence, the violence, and stop it. I know that when we are together, we can transform not only our own lives but also the lives of others who are in need. Always remember that our voice are really matter.
Thank you so much, Ate Monique, for that very, very wonderful answer. How about are there other PSN leaders that wanted to answer that question? Anyone? What is your message to survivors who are interested to also become a survivor leader? Wala na po? Okay, so let's proceed with the next question. Okay, what is the one question you wish people would ask you about voices of empowerment or your work as survivor leaders that they rarely do? And what would be your answer? Okay, let's get it from Ruby.
I think I want to feed into that question. Just an attempt, okay? So, um, I think one question that I would want to hear from partners is that how can they replicate or maybe adapt and effectively utilize the survivor engagement workflow. Why is because for me, I would very grateful that they show interest in that, and we know for a fact that our partners are not just remotely here in the Philippines. So we also have partners internationally. So I believe that this model of survivor engagement workflow was developed and based from survivor voices here in the Philippines. So with that question, I would like for partners to have like maybe similar workflow with survivors from other countries or across countries. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Ruby. Anyone else from our survivor leaders that wanted to answer the question?
Yeah.
Yes, Liberty.
If I have something to recommend to the partners, I would recommend to use the survivor engagement workflow or process because those words written there was from the people who has the lived experience of the violence. So I think there's I think no other instrument to be used to aside from the workflow process because it's yeah that's what I said earlier, it's coming from the lived experience people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liberty. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Anyone else wanted to add from our survivor leaders? Nothing more? Okay. So next is, what future plan can we expect as the member of the organization? From our survivor leaders, um, what future plan can we expect as members of the organization or of the network? Anyone, you can speak in Tagalog. We have our interpreter right here. we have Ate Gab and Ate Jen. So okay, go Ate Monique.
As simple as staying support system to others for my fellow survivor lead.
Yes, yes, I actually agree with that. We are a very strong support group, and whenever we needed help with the members, with the other members, we're always available. Anyone else wanted to answer that very beautiful question? Future plans for the networks? Yes, Crystal.
Hello. So for me, I would be very proud to say that we have activities and other projects that's going to happen, but it's not yet like Tagalogin ko lang. Hindi pa like parang sinasabi or ganun. Pero mayroon namang mga naka-line up na activities din ng PSN. And as to sa mga members naman, we are um although we have different geographical locations nga po, Manila, Cebu, and Mindanao. So we are doing our best naman to have those places na magkaroon ng mga activities and engage with each other. So, and those are other expectations na kanilang pwedeng i-expect as a member of the PSN. And yeah, you have other additionals?
Thank you. Go, Ruby.
As an addition to that, although I agree with you so much, although I'm not part of the leadership team in the Philippine Survivor Network, I am envisioning that, I would like to say that what can you expect when you join Philippine Survivor Network is that um, it could open more vision for you, because what we hope when we join or here in the Philippine Survivor Network is to build capacity for survivor leaders, to make them well equipped to lead in the communities, right? So just to give you an example, when I was rescued, I was like, I really don't know where to start. I pursued college, but I really didn't know why. But then when I like started engaging with this engagement with partners, and my mind was open to like legal procedures, legal matters, that's when my desire to become a lawyer came from. So that's just one of the examples. Of course, we have different perspectives, but just to give you like an idea of what PSN can offer for you.
Thank you so much for that, Ruby. And I agree, since what I mentioned a while ago, we have upcoming modules that will definitely equip the members. So yeah, so we're looking forward to that. So thank you. For the next question from Army Martinez, how do you see PSN impacting the incidence of abuse or trafficking in person in the Philippines? This is also directed to our survivor leaders. If you wanted to like answer how do you see the PSN impacting the incidence of abuse or trafficking in persons in the Philippines? Yes, Ruby.
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful question. So I believe that we are already impacting the incidence of did he say child trafficking?
Abuse or trafficking in persons.
Yeah, because although we are not like the ones who are on the ground doing the groundworks like rescuing, investigating, but us as survivor advocates who are boldly sharing our experiences about this, looking for platforms where we can share our stories to raise awareness, I believe that this can help educate the communities on how to avoid and fight that kind of crime. And somehow, I believe that with continuous work and support from government agencies, collaboration with the civil society, I believe that that kind of issues in the face of the Philippines can be um, reduced.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Ruby. Anyone else wanted to answer or wanted to echo what Ruby said? Nothing more? Okay, so we have another question here. Despite the challenges like not readily available resources, survivors' voices could be involved in such great guidelines. How could they overcome such challenge? So let's hear it from Ati Chris.
Thank you, Thea, and for that question as well. Well, in the context of She Works, we are witnesses to the daily difficulties of our women survivors as we also embrace their families and their children. And the struggle is real in the dailiness of their lives. And as an organization, it pains us too, seeing their situations, but we also remind ourselves that the power is not within She Works alone, but in helping, in ushering our women, their children, the families to be able to come up with what is available to them. In the social development perspective, it's always good to encourage people or the community to look at what they have in their resources. And it is a good invitation for our community to ask, to consult our women and the children what they need. It's not our agenda, it's theirs. And when we hear from them, then we act and we try our best to intervene. So, in our context, we do offer alternative livelihood skills and entrepreneurial trainings. But of course, our limitation is we really cannot provide everything, but we train them to be entrepreneurs in their own settings because this is what they are skilled with, our women survivors. So in that sense, then we come in, but we just guide them and and train them and then also usher them and allow them to learn from their own mistakes, perhaps in their businesses, but to move on and learn from those learnings. So, through that, ours is a simple community, a small community, but through honoring the suggestions and voices of our women and teens, then we are able to come up on how we could better and effectively help them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ati Chris. And do we still have questions there, Barbie? I think this is the last question that we have.
Yes, we have. So this actually to be answered by the IJM. So how do we measure the effectiveness and impact of survivor engagement, both on the survivors themselves and the broader goals of the organizations or initiative?
Yes. Maybe call on our attorney law here in front.
Sorry if you saw a flash of white, that was me trying to enter properly from off camera. Yeah, so it's a great question. And the first thing I'll say is when it comes to measuring how effective survivor engagement is, it also depends on who you're asking. I think it's very important to admit that for the survivor themselves, they are the ones who will tell us if they believe their dignity, their their desires were upheld in the process of engaging them. So there is a validation that requires them to actually tell you if that process was indeed life-giving for them. For an organization, I think that there are many ways that you might decide to measure. There's the quantitative, there's the yes or no approach, where did you actually consult survivors or engage them? There's the qualitative, where you can actually dive into the experience of the survivor and whether they felt that the consultation was real and true and correct. And I think those are all valid ways of measuring. When it comes to the organization's broader goals and whether they accomplish something, for example, the creation of a policy, or maybe in the case of IJM, for example, the creation of a child protective prosecution study, success in that particular process looked like, let's say, measuring the impact in a particular case it also came down to what the survivors felt um, about the actual results in their specific cases. So they became the ultimate validator if their experience throughout the prosecution system was indeed protective of them and their interests. So again, depending on what the organization is trying to accomplish, the measurement that you will require might be qualitative, requiring the survivor to actually be there and engage, or it might be defined by a process like the survivor engagement policy of the Interagency Council Against Trafficking, where you're able to say yes, we followed the policy, the guidelines, and we were able to produce an engagement that, in accordance with those guidelines, was appropriate and successful. But ultimately, I think the final the final answer will come from the survivors themselves, and it's something that the Philippine Survivor Network might most be able to speak to, which is what does successful survivor engagement look like for you as a community? And that is something that we will not be able to decide for the network. It's something that I think as a community, survivors will be able to decide for themselves and communicate to us. It's an area that, as She Works mentioned, we become the learners and the co-sojourners with all of you, where I think the tools and the measurements might have to be put aside and the narrative shifts from us to all of you, survivor leaders, and you get to tell us what victory looks like in your eyes and in your own words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney Law. That's a very fruitful conversation with the speakers and participants, Thea. So we have now come to the end of the program. To do this on a powerful note, we will now hear a call to action from another courageous survivor leader.
Through her public narrative, she will remind us why we are here and why we must continue working together for a stronger tomorrow. And just a reminder to please refrain from taking screenshots to provide the survivor leader's identity. Let us welcome Joy.
Good day, everyone. My name is Joy. I am a survivor leader from Philippine Survivor Network, and I am also a registered worker. I am happy to see all of you both in person and online. On behalf of the Philippine Survivor Network, I would like to thank the speakers who have shared their experiences and insights related to survivor engagement. Today, we heard about the Voices of Empowerment report, a powerful reminder that survivors are not just participants in the justice system, but leaders and collaborators in the movement for change. This report reflects our truths, our resilience, and our vision for a future where our voices shape the systems meant to protect us. We then listened to various partners who responded by sharing their insights and commitment to partner with us and support us. We also heard our survivor leaders and partners in their experience and collaborating for different projects. I feel very hopeful that our goal as Survivor Network is progressing. Because since 2023 PSN was launched, a lots of opportunities, advocacy events, and skills for us survivors, and many, many more, right? And with that, I would, through the joint effort of survivor leaders and partners. And I am inspired to continue to advocate for change and support other survivors who want to grow as leaders of the movement. To our partners, please never give up in engaging as survivors as you do your work. We invite you not just to support, but to co-create with Philippine Survivor Network. Invest in survivor-led solutions. Make space for our leadership. And let's build systems that don't just rescue, but restore and empower. I was once a shy and timid girl, but once I joined the survivor group, I felt that I was accepted and not alone in the trauma I experienced. I also developed skills on how to advocate and collaborate. So, to my fellow survivors, I hope you see that you are not alone in the fight. We can work together as the next generation to be fearless in moving for positive change in our society. There are a lot of things to do other than those projects that were presented earlier. So I hope you are inspired to be active in collaborating with our government and non-government partners as they develop more solutions to address the problems of violence against vulnerable people. This conference is just the beginning, a beginning of deeper collaboration, louder voices, and unstoppable hope. Together, let's build a world where survivors don't just survive, they lead. Until all are free. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Joy, for that very heartfelt message. And I would just like to say that it's really inspiring to hear my fellow survivor leaders speak with power and authority. And I hope everyone present here today is also feeling inspired. Today's conference reminded us of all that is possible when survivors lead and partners stand in solidarity.
We thank each one of you for joining us, both virtually and in person. Let's continue building a future where survivors are not only heard but empowered and supported.
I totally agree with you, Barbie, and thank you all for being part of the Survivor Conference. And if you would like to share your feedback on this conference, please use the link in the chat box or the QR code on the screen to fill a very short questionnaire for additional input. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Thank you for our online participants, for our in person participants. Woo. Thank you.